What's up, everybody, man? Back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing another Godzilla x Kong news roundup. That's right, in this video we will be continuing our chronological journey through the release and development of Godzilla Kong: The New Empire and its subsequent sequel by continuing to talk about events that happened in March of 2024. Let's jump into it, getting into a really interesting interview with Adam Wingard where he shares his goals for New Empire, what he was trying to accomplish with that movie and what he learned while making it, as well as a little teaser about where the MonsterVerse is heading, and in some ways where it is no longer heading. Starting out with some art like always, this first set comes to us from Mr. Dope Pope, legendary artist, incredibly nice person, and also concept artist for the MonsterVerse. Of course, he is the one who designed Tiamat for us. Dope Pope released these wonderful ZBrush artwork pieces of Shimo. Shimo looking incredible in the Dope Pope redesign. It is so menacing, I really like it, and the eyes, the way Dope Pope has done the eyes is so creepy. I also really like the crystals, how they capture light differently, and the way that he's like done overall coloring is super cool, the way she's so reflective. I wish we could have seen more of that reflectiveness in the movie itself, because that is so awesome. Fredo Frapp did this, which is incredible, showing evolved Godzilla comped into Godzilla versus Megalon doing the tail slide. I love the way that the tail bends with the animation there. That's pretty solid there, and it is so silly. I also love how egregiously long evolved Godzilla's spines are when put in this context. It is so funny. I don't know why this goes as hard as it does, but this is pretty awesome. Mud Arena, I don't know how to say it, released their Godzilla x Kong Honeydew Milk Tea and Cookie Crumble Milk Tea Boba, and they have this awesome animation of the milk tea crashing down into that cave that Kong jumps in New Empire with the crystals. It is like a really epic animation of these two running side by side. I don't know why it goes as hard as it does, but it's a lot of fun. Elemental Boy posted a picture of pre-ordering these things, and it actually looks just rancid, like a bunch of beans in a bag. That is gross. FYE released a couple Godzilla Kong New Empire chocolate bars, some candy. Of course, I put Shimo's balls in my mouth in one of my most iconic shorts. What does Shimo's balls taste like? Whoa. Now, I know that sounds bad. And I reviewed some of the chocolate in my shorts as well. They also released some Godzilla hot sauce, which I do own, and perhaps we'll have to bust that out when I hit 100,000 subscribers, which hopefully will be soon. Hey, there's a little incentive for you. Get us to 100K, and maybe I'll recreate my worst moment of all time with the hot sauce video. And then there were some Godzilla drinks. The soda was alright. Wasn't the best soda, but it was pretty good. Regal Cinemas released their Godzilla x Kong cup toppers and cups. The cups themselves look pretty cool, and I like the cup toppers, very cute. AMC revealed their exclusive Godzilla Kong New Empire popcorn bucket, but it's got Kong etched into one side, Godzilla etched into the other, and then the popcorn bucket's actually split in pieces. This is one of the biggest popcorn buckets I've ever seen them do. It was enormous. I do have it, and it takes up so much space. I like how stylish it is. Some of the other ones are also pretty neat, I will say. Like there is this one, which is the Cinemark tin popcorn bucket, which is pretty cool. This one's a little more traditional. Japanese theater exclusive Godzilla Kong New Empire merch was announced. I believe here you're seeing an acrylic poster stand. Very cool, but we'll talk more about that later in another video. The SH Monster Arts Godzilla 2024 Unevolved and Kong 2024 were sold at AMC theaters with the launch of Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. I saw these things in AMC theaters. I actually was super excited to come across these things in the wild. That was so cool. So it's pretty cool that we've started to sell figures like this at theaters alongside the movie, and I clicked on the next piece a little too soon. The Evolved Godzilla's Children mask was revealed. It is the Thing of Nightmares, harkening back to the days of Ruby's Rodan mask. This is just truly disturbing to look at with the four eyes going on here, and it gets more interesting. Someone posted that nothing will ever live up to the Godzilla 2014 masks, which I didn't even know existed, and I'm starting to believe that's true, because Legendary revealed their new inflatable Godzilla costume, which looks incredibly odd. Like, show a picture of the actual costume. This is just a CG render, as well as the Kong costume, and again, it's like, that can't be the real costume. That's gotta be a CG render of it. Why are the arms so short? No chance. It looks so silly. That's like on Call of Duty Zombies when you use the baby shrink ray on Shangri-La. They also released the Godzilla accessory kit and the Kong accessory kit, and don't let these pictures of them looking pretty solid fool you. I came across these things in the wild, and they are incredible. They look so much better than the advertisements could ever make them seem. They are so funny. I love them so much. They are so odd and silly and goofy, especially because his face can warp in like that. I was excited to come across these things in the wild, although I did not pick them up. up. U2's teased that they were doing a Godzilla Kong the New Empire line, and then they did reveal that line. They have an evolved Godzilla, which looks pretty cute. He's looking a lot like their Godzilla 2021. They have a Godzilla vs. Shimo set, which I love. I think this is great. I've come across it in person, but it was very expensive, so I didn't pick it up. Kong with the Beast Glove looking fantastic, and then Kong vs. Scar King, which I really love as well. My personal fave is Godzilla vs. Shimo, but I do think the Kong vs. Scar King is a lot of fun. They also have this little banner showing off their New Empire line, which is very cute. I'm a big fan of it, and I hope that at some point I can pick them up for a reasonable price. Spiral Studios revealed their Hall of Fame series Godzilla Evolved 2024. It is a 27 centimeter figure, aka 10 inches. It looks fantastic. The detail on this thing is incredible. I particularly love the spines, the texture of the spines, and the way that you have Godzilla's outer shell still partially attached to the spines. Godzilla's pose is looking great. It's a wonderful figure that sold for $189, one of Spiral Studios' most affordable figures. Evolved Godzilla, Scar King, and Shimo head skins added to Call of Duty Warzone. They were first teased here, but eventually we did get to see them. The Shimo one's pretty cool. I like the crystals. That looks really awesome. Scar King one's pretty neat as well. Looks very intimidating. The Godzilla one I'm a little underwhelmed with, especially when you compare it to the old Godzilla Call of Duty Warzone crossover skins, where Godzilla looked really cool and Mechagodzilla looked awesome, and I don't think the new one lives up to that. But as I said, those were added to Call of Duty Warzone Season 3. Phantom City Creative released these Godzilla Kong New Empire posters. Pretty cool. They're very stylish. Bow to the new king. This one's wonderful. This is the Francisco Frank Villa poster from Made by Mutant. This is awesome. I love the colors. This is so cool. This feels like it would glow in the dark. I really love the colors of this one, and is one of my favorite New Empire posters. I think it is sick, man. I'm really into it. A Godzilla Kong New Empire pink banner was released. I think this gave us a new look at Evolved Godzilla at the time, but there you go. It's on a lot of the toy packaging and stuff. Godzilla Evolves concept art was released. This concept art was done by Jared Krzyzewski. It is actually a later version of the concept art. It looks pretty cool. Godzilla looks very awesome here. I actually think this concept art looks cooler than Godzilla does in the movie. I like the darker gray color of Godzilla a lot. I also like how much it contrasts with the browner belly. I think this looks fantastic. I also really love how veiny and flesh-like Godzilla's spines were. I actually really like this idea. It's kind of grotesque in a way. I think it's really cool. It's more interesting to me than Godzilla having basically crystals in his body. I'm just a big fan of it. I think overall this is pretty awesome concept art. I think Jared did a great job with this. Adam Wingard had a big sit-down interview with IMAX, and in it he opened up about the making of New Empire, and I really loved this interview. First of all, shout out to the interviewer for being incredibly wholesome and excited. I thought the interviewer did a good job, and Adam Wingard seems like such a nice, wholesome dude. I love watching interviews with Adam Wingard because his passion is always there, and it makes me so happy to see. Starting out, Adam Wingard explains that he's been a Godzilla fan ever since he was a kid, and that he cannot remember a time in his life without Godzilla and Kong. He reveals that some of his first memories of watching films in the first place were of watching the original King Kong and Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster, which he's been on record saying is his favorite Godzilla movie. He says he is most proud of the fact that in New Empire, he was able to channel the things he imagined as a 7 to 12-year-old kid into the movie. And so in a way, while making New Empire, he was really trying to recapture the experience of the way he viewed those movies when he was a kid. And in doing so, he really latched on to the monsters and their personalities. And so he wanted to give the audience a huge connection to the kaiju and their personalities and their characterizations in the way that he interpreted them as a kid, and the way that we can all interpret these characters as a kid. And I think that's one of the things that makes that film work so well. People get kind of angry at me for saying this, but I truly don't mean it as a bad thing at all. Godzilla Kong the New Empire was really made as a kid's movie. As Adam Wingard says here, the primary demographic for the film is the ages of 7 to 12 years old, and I think that it's kind of a disservice to the film to not give it credit as, in my opinion, one of the greatest kids adventure films ever made. I really dig it in that context. I think it's a fantastic adventure for families and younger audiences, and I'm really happy that Adam Wingard got to recapture that. You know, we all have the experience of playing with our action figures and being like, what if that was a movie? And he actually got to do it. And for me, it really comes across that way. It's like this incredibly cozy, inviting film that brings you into the world as if you were a kid again. That's what makes the movie work so well. So shout out Adam Wingard for pulling that off. He says he felt like Godzilla vs. Kong was actually this really long process of acclimating to working with kaiju and trying to problem solve filmmaking things, like how to have characters interacting with other characters that are so large and also happen to be imaginary and not on screen and impossible to film in the moment. And so he felt like Godzilla vs. Kong was this kind of testing ground for Godzilla Kong the New Empire, where eventually he discovered you can go these really long stretches with just showing the monsters and having no human characters around. And so in New Empire, he wanted to emphasize the monster's perspective as the film's perspective. While Kong is more human and emotive, he wanted Godzilla to have this animalistic stoicism that you can recognize that there is intention and feeling behind it, but you can also read into it with your own feelings and fill in the gaps as to what Godzilla's thinking so that you have a deeper connection with Godzilla as a result. Wingard says he loves when the monsters can interact in ways that show true communication and the audience gets exactly what they're saying and feeling without a single word of dialogue. I love this fact. This is just wonderful. This makes me so happy to hear, but the script for New Empire was written with that in mind. The script is written in ways so that whenever Kong's speaking or thinking or roaring or whatever, it's actually written as dialogue in the script so that the filmmakers knew what each roar and emotion Kong was trying to convey meant, so that that truly mattered and you could track his feelings across the whole movie. That makes me really happy to hear. That is how these characters should be treated. Adam Wingard has a wonderful quote here. They aren't just creatures, they are real characters. I love that, man. Makes me so happy. He talks about how emotional and powerful it was to see people turn up to Godzilla vs. Kong in theaters in 2021 despite the pandemic, and how relieving it was for that film to get a theatrical release in the first place, given that that was almost stripped away from them. He says he was really proud of fan reactions in the theater to that movie and the big turnouts to that film, despite movie theaters being at limited capacity back then. Wingard talks about how hard he worked to create an immersive experience for New Empire and to bring viewers in so that they felt like they walked away from the film having gone on a grand adventure. Adam Wingard reveals why he wanted GXK to be part of the filmed for IMAX experience. He says it's so that it could kind of feel like a true ride. The expanded aspect ratio was perfect for the film because the Titans are so enormous that the expanded aspect ratio makes them feel so much grander. And it was easy to pick which sequences would go in IMAX and which wouldn't because there's so many sequences with the monsters and Hollow Earth that they just beg for IMAX. In fact, some of the human scenes were also shot with IMAX so that they could blend with the IMAX scenes better. One thing I noticed while watching New Empire, which I think they take it a little too far, and I brought it up ever since the trailers, but there's this weird distortion on the sides of the frame, and we finally have an answer as to why. Wingard reveals that the actual film was shot with an anamorphic camera, and they worked really hard to create an anamorphic feel for the entire film with these warped and distorted edges. They created this overlay for the monster sequences that could give it a similar look to the actual old school type of filming they were doing with the cameras, even during scenes that were entirely CGI. They didn't want to create the cleanest shots of Titans, but instead they wanted to create shots of the Titans that looked like they could have been captured by a real camera. We saw something similar happen in Kong Skull Island. If you're very observant, you can notice. Finally, he says the IMAX version is the optimal version of the film. In fact, he says it's the only non-cropped version of the movie where the framing is as he intended it, and the VFX they worked so hard on are on full display, making it the definitive version of the movie, which is wonderful to report. It's never gotten a home release. You just can't watch the IMAX version now that it's out of theaters. There is no DVD release that lets you switch the aspect ratio back to the IMAX standard, and I don't know why. Give it to us. What? There's so much of this movie that we just will never get to see again. It is so disappointing to think about. What's up with that? Disney, when they release Marvel movies, they have IMAX enhanced versions which put the aspect ratio back together for us. In a very interesting discussing films article, Adam Wingard opens up about what he would do in the future. I'm interested about this because although Adam Wingard is not returning for the next Godzilla Kong movie, he was supposed to, and he was working on the story. He was the one that was there when they greenlit a sequel, and I think a lot of his ideas can make it into the next movie. So he says, the whole idea is that if you've done 2 movies, like maybe you should just go ahead and do a 3rd, because as you said, there's a trilogy in there. I definitely think there's more story to this, and I think that I have more story to tell, but it just depends on how GXK does, and how things kind of shape out. I know that that sounds like a bullshit diplomatic answer, but the truth is, if I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I do have more story to tell with these monsters, and I know where I'd go with it. I would be very excited to be able to come back for another one if things work out. One thing that I find very interesting about that quote is we're already seeing the early seeds sown of him not returning. It seems like he's kind of aware here that he might not be coming back. Contrary to popular belief, I don't think that they're greenlighting these movies necessarily one at a time. I do think they kind of have an idea in their heads over at Legendary. If this movie does well, we're gonna keep doing them. If this movie doesn't do well, we'll probably do one last and then wrap it up, because they still are all in on the MonsterVerse. There's Monarch Legacy of Monsters, which is coming back for a season 2. There's also a brand new spin-off of that show coming out on Apple TV+, also live action. It's also one of their biggest franchises. I think it's Legendary Pictures' most financially successful franchise. It's one of Warner Bros' only standing things that they've got right now that's functioning well. They're all in on the MonsterVerse, and Toho's all in on it. Toho's co-producing the films. There's no Godzilla obligation to leave after a certain amount of time. Godzilla's there for as long as they want him, as long as they're willing to pay for him. And so they're all in on the MonsterVerse, but you can already see the seeds being sown that Wingard might not return, and I think it's because he knew he had some other contractual obligations going on. I have heard that Wingard leaving has absolutely nothing nothing to do with like a big fight with the studio or anything. It's just simply the dude had other projects he was obligated to do first. Studio wasn't willing to wait for him to come back, and so they said, all right, we're gonna move forward ahead with another movie without you then. And it sounds like, from what I've heard, he kind of went, okay, cool, well, if there's a chance in the future for us to work together that works out, I'll come back. And they went, awesome, we would love that. I don't think things ended on negative terms from what I understand. Now that could be wrong. And as you can see here, Wingard's got ideas of where he would go. I wish we could have seen more setups for where things were heading in the future. Like, there's no direction that the MonsterVerse has right now. I wish we have a bit of a direction on where things are going, but it's nice to hear that at least he was thinking of where things could go next. Hopefully it's a natural progression of the story, and hopefully with the next film, they can take some of those ideas and expand upon them. I would really like to see that. I want the world building to feel a little more cohesive, so that'd be really cool. Well, what do you think of all this? As always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It is through the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to continue to make videos like this for you in the first place. If you want to get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more, please consider joining the Patreon using the link in the description below. And if that's not your thing, please consider joining as a channel member for exclusive perks. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.